So, just to start with a quick round of introduction. So I'll start with mine, and I would then invite um, all our speakers to just do a quick round of introduction. I come with a 16 years of experience in HR. I head talent and leadership function in one of the local banks in UAE. Have been a keen learner around the area of DEIB, and these topics are more close to me than others. Not just in terms of practice perspective, but also from the academics perspective, because these areas are a hot topic, and there has been a lot of research which has been happening in and around this region, and also across the world around DEIB. One of the key part of the overall experience of mine is my research interest around future of work, and also around how the overall work culture has been evolving across, when we look at the inclusivity and diversity piece. And as we go more and more remote, how these things are also shifting across, right? So these are my research areas across. I do work around ESG and other piece collaboration. I'm one of the doctoral students with the Indian School of Business. I'm midway through my journey, so hopefully submitting my IRP, the initial research proposal, very soon. So would like to speak to you guys individually as well on the front of data, and also how the whole theory base has been evolving across HR and OB. So this is about me. Also, as we are leading this topic, also as we are moving ahead with a lot of nationalization pressures, and I think GCC as a country is not very old to see that. India has been seeing much before that, when we have those quota system introduced across, and the other part of the world as well has been seeing such level of nationalization pressure, or a prioritization pressure, which has come across with various types of categories. And how do we balance across with maintaining that equity, maintaining that diversity, also driving the equity agenda? So this is what is our topic. This is about me. Would like to go round wise. I mean, like we can start with anybody from our speakers, five of them. You can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then we will start with the introduction and more deep dive into the topic. We can start with Javed because we're giving him a preference to leave early. So starting with you.
I like how you're giving me the preference, right? So thank you so much, Abhishek. Happy to. Introduction wise, I've been in talent acquisition for the last 20 plus years, and this is all I do. Is I'm a very passionate recruiter, and I like recruiting people and building businesses and so on and so forth. From an organization's perspective, I've spent time in IBM, Mastercard, a startup in Saudi Arabia, and KPMG is my current portfolio, which I've been doing for about 3 years. And I think diversity and inclusion, that's what it used to be known as, or diversity and equity, and then it became IDE. We've seen terminology changes happen in it. And I have been doing diversity since 2006-7, right? And I think before even anybody could conceptualize anything, we bought differently abled or physically challenged abled hiring into IBM. And this was 2007, 2008, wherein we had all the NGOs come and participate, and we hired people with various spectrums of autism, physically challenged, and so on and so forth. So this is very, very close to me. And hence I'm here to help Abhishek and put together a few talking points. So that's a little about me.
So I'll take it on from here. Javed, thanks for the introduction. And thanks, Abhishek. Hi, I'm Tanu, and I'm based out of Delhi, NCR in India. Happy to be here in this forum because First, a little about myself. I am also an HR person with close to 26 years of experience, having worked with corporates, mostly into the ITS sector. The last stint that I had and the longest was with Wipro. And Javed, since you mentioned IBM, Wipro also started with this practice of, diversity hiring in 2006, 2007. And the first person to be hired with disability was something that I was involved in. So the practice, I think, goes pretty long back, and that was my introduction to the DE&I area. And now, as you kind of talked about the evolution of the diversity and inclusion space. After having worked for close to 26 years, it is now I started my own firm called Human Factor. While I was into HR consulting, and my forte was HR transformation, having worked in the area of SAP implementation and technology implementation. It is last year that I got into the D&I space with my firm. So initially I was doing HR consulting. I'm also a coach, an executive and a life coach. I got into this area of disability inclusion, specifically, in the disability space. And my company is focusing on disability inclusion, working with corporates, helping them, look at how their culture, their environment can be made more inclusive with respect to people with disabilities. And in that reference, we've tied up with an international organization doing accessibility audits, certifications, and the various other services. So, and this came out of my own passion of working with people with disability, coming out of my own lived experiences. As a caregiver, I have been in my family, unfortunately, have been taking care of people who have gone through temporary disabilities. So I understand how inaccessible the places are when you have to kind of, take care of people. So that's where the entire thing started in working in the disability inclusion space, and happy to contribute here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanu. Chaitanya, Rima.
Hello everyone, I'm Chaitanya Kalidindi. Looking at your profiles, I feel like a fresher. I'm from India, Hyderabad. I'm working as an assistant professor in Vishweshwani School of Business. I deal with HR papers, HR and OB, and I'm pursuing my PhD from Symbiosis in the area of digital recruitment. And my recent interest, maybe in the last 2 years, I'm much more interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm following people who are into this profile. So that's all about myself, and I'm very happy to be a part of this forum. Thank you.
Welcome, Chaitanya, Rima. And
Hello, everyone. I have been an HR generalist all throughout my career lifespan of 15 years across different industries. I started my career in India, southern part of India, Bangalore. When I was pursuing my MBA, at that time I pursued industry integrated MBA, which had a combination of full-time studies and 1.5 years of industry association. Like by the time you complete your 2 years of MBA degree, you also have 1.5 years of experience. So at that time, I started my work. Then in India, a major part of my experience is at H&M production office. So I owe my rock solid foundation of HR through that in the office. And I never thought that I would leave H&M, but as luck had different plan, I had to move with my family to UAE. Then in UAE, I did some freelancing initially for 1 to 2 years. Since last 3 to 4 years, I am part of a fintech organization. So here I established HR function. Like when I joined, I was 30th employee. Today we are around 150. And I joined during peak pandemic time. Basically, what I did was to introduce diversity in terms of the representation of male, female gender, but diversity of mindset, because I think that's not very easy to comprehend, and also understand that how do you have diversity of mindset. We used to have different scores, evaluation criteria, bring different people within the interview and hiring platform, that people are invited and they are evaluating, bringing people from different thoughts. How it is like sometimes in few roles, it is very much prominent that particular region or nationality all only must be hired. So I try to break that pattern. Another thing that I tried, that in technology, still women are not that much invited, included, or welcomed. I was fourth female and among 30 employees, and I was very clearly, explicitly told no more female hiring. That I took as a challenge. I of course said, okay, let me look into it. I'm talking about 2020 when it was peak pandemic, and again, as luck had it, a lot of people from India or other parts of the world traveled and stayed in Dubai, because Dubai was offering a very safe haven during pandemic, how this country handled pandemic. So they were easily and immediately available to join our organization, and that is what our company required. So it helped me bring a lot of female staff and reduce this mindset that female cannot be successful in IT. Another thing that we also had, this disability one. For us, IT, you do not need to have a like people of determination that we call in this country. So we have hired them as well, that our work deliveries has nothing to do with our physical disabilities. So we hired that. We also took care of the accessible area, as Tanu mentioned, that in this region, again, UAE, most of the places are accessible through wheelchairs. So we try to have same accessibility in our office.
I think these are the solutions which you're talking about, Prima. I think you should keep it,
Sorry,
as we will
I'll keep
talk
it for
about.
introduction time.
Yes, we
Thank
will
you.
talk about, as we will talk about what are some of those things that we are doing it for it, and what are some of those things which we cannot do it. So keep these discussions, very valuable points from there.
Thank you.
Aruma, over to you. Just
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much. Lovely to see all of the faces here and the names as well. I'm based in Dubai as well. I've grown up in the UAE, but I did go back to India for a bit. Career-wise, a little more than 20 years of experience in HR. Just two companies that I worked in. The last of which I'd spent almost, I think, 12 years in before I moved into more of freelancing. But yeah, the passion and the interest to advocate for DEIB, I think, started maybe a few years ago when Emiratisation started taking more of an important strategic perspective within the sector that I was in. I was in the insurance sector. The insurance authority had a lot of different ways of looking at Emiratisation, and for us, at least for me personally, there was a bigger picture in mind, and that's where I kind of started making inroads into what the DEIB aspects of that was. DEI is what most people know. As I did more research, it moved into DEIB, and I think the B part of it, belonging, is what encapsulates my perspective of what we need to do within this space. Happy to share whatever I've experienced and tried to implement over the course of this hour. Thank you.
thank you. Just one more of our panelists, Nicole, has joined, and Nicole, if you can quickly introduce yourself so that we can. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole. I'm based out of Singapore. Last year I took on a challenging role of a COO of a e-commerce startup. But before that, I was very much into HR, and really like the championing what you call the strategic and forward-thinking kind of HR, because I come from a very startup tech-based company. So it was a fintech and now e-commerce. So in Singapore, the good thing is that the government helps with crafting certain agenda and all of this. So I was very glad that given it a small startup, Metro won the Fair and Progressive Employment Award for I think 2 or 3 years, 3 times in a row. So it's something that is talk about, fairness to start. And that's where my first thinking about, okay, what is all this about? And yeah, so I'm like, and over time, I really enjoy this topic because, I can personally experience, like, what is it like being woman in tech, and the various of, abilities. So I think that's something that, I feel very passionate about. So thank you, Sriman, for inviting, and very happy to be here.
Thank you, Nicole, for such a lovely introduction. As we get into this topic, I would like to start our discussion with a short story, and we'll stick to our topic of nationalization policies versus how do we manage that balance. So here's the story. So there is a gentleman by the name Ahmed, and he's been graduated from US. He's one of the UAE national. He's graduated from US, and he came to UAE searching for a suitable job. And he has been going from companies to company finding a relevant job for him, right? He's a bilingual. He can speak English. He can speak Arabic. And there is another character in our story. His name is Muhammad, and Muhammad is same like Javeed, and he's one of the recruitment managers, Emiratization recruitment manager in an organization who has to hire Emiratis, or who has to hire nationals, if I would say, maintain some level of percentage because that's a policy norm, as well as balance to bring in right quality of talent, quote unquote, and drive the whole diversity agenda as part of his recruitment KPIs as well, right? The third character here is the chief nationalization officer, right? Who is a government authority, and he writes all those policies and processes and support system, which Nicole was also talking about, from a perspective of driving these agendas in the country. And I have one expat who has come across, say, from India or Southeast Asia, had some 8-9 years of experience, say, if I talk about a bank, say in banking, and searching for a job. So these are the four characters. These are the four key stakeholders who primarily are going to be having different thought process around when we drive nationalization agenda and when we drive diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know that this group is very much represented by the HR recruitment manager kind of a thing. We are underrepresented by the other three stakeholders' perspective. So if we really need to balance this act, maybe we need to bring the other three stakeholders together as well. But if we just talk about and take the hat of these four key players around nationalization and diversity to be driven together, how do we move forward? So my first question to the panelists, and since this is a lightning discussion, so we would give each one of you 3 minutes to talk about it. There's going to be timer on the screen, all of that. So my first question is, looking from these four stakeholders' perspective, how do we create balance, right? And how do we create balance from the perspective of all four stakeholders? So you can choose to take any stakeholder's perspective, irrespective of, we are more lopsided on the recruitment side, but still. So try to take these stakeholders' perspective, and then we will look at what are some of those balancing act and how much and where we should balance. So we will start with Javed, and then we will move to the others. Over to you, Javed.
I'm feeling so preferential right now, but I like it. Thank you very much.
No, I think we are underrepresented here, so your time starts now.
Thank you very much. But listen, I think it's a great case study, and I think bringing this together is a great value. And I think, in this case study or in a larger kind of an option, I think we should start with very, very the basics. I think I always keep telling everybody is we got to return to our basics. One is we need to start with creating a buy-in. Now, inclusion, diversity, nationalization, any of these agenda items is not an HR agenda. It has to be a co-created agenda of the organization and the HR. Only then this is going to work. So, and I think the first thing is to create that buy-in, create that understanding. And then, of course, you work on sensitizing the stakeholders aspect of it, right? Which is going to be the most important, because it can't be that we throw a diversity, inclusion, or localization aspect onto their agendas and then they like deal with it, right? Our HR jobs don't get over after you recruit or after you onboard a differently abled or a local or a so on and so forth. It has to be something that we partner with them for a long run. So that is definitely something that we need to be working on. And while you're doing all of it, you have to start creating a culture of inclusion. And only then this is going to work at a long run. It's not going to be that if you just do it as a checkbox or a simple tick box, "Okay, I have to hire this, let me get done with it," or "I have to onboard it and let me get done with it." It's going to fail miserably. So you have to keep continuously working on that infinity loop of creating a cultural inclusion, and keep looking at how your stakeholder, your organization is showing up as a firm or as an organization in this whole topic, right? And I think those are my couple of points, Abhishek. But and I'll leave the other panels to definitely go back and add. But these are the three aspects of it. If you are going to get successful, and if you're going to be able to keep this employee for a long run in your organization, then you got to start with these basic points of having to create a buy-in and creating an inclusion kind of a culture in the organization.
Perfect. So as Javed unfolded, this is more from an organizational perspective, so more from a recruiter's perspective, that how do he has to drive both hiring as well as the inclusivity agenda. Anyone else, you can unmute yourself. As soon as you will do, I will start the timer. Please,
Can I add my point?
please.
Yeah. Panelists, please don't think I'm derailing from the theme. I'll try to relate by the end of the conversation. I'll try to relate it with the theme. So we are talking about how to balance this nationalization policies and DEI. But one of my recent experiences made me think, do company really, serious about DEI goals? So one of the former student, came to campus and we were talking. I was asking him, MNC in Bangalore. Am I audible? Yeah.
You're coming in and out, but you're now okay.
Okay. So I asked him, like, tell me, how is the work culture, MNC and all. He said, ma'am, I'm very happy, in my team, 10 people are there, 2 people sit in US, we are very good, we are going out, this and that, he told. But then he told, ma'am, Ravi, one of the other student, but he is very sad and he wants to resign. So I asked him, like, what happened? Ma'am, my team is completely normal, but his team is, kind of different. His team has one person who is not straight, and one person comes from a region where in India we think he's from an uneducated region. So he's disappointed, and he went to HR and he complained about all these issues, and he wanted to leave the organization, or he asked him to change the team. So to my surprise, the HR told him, it seems, don't worry, in 2 months we are going to change that person who is not straight to the other region, so you don't worry about it. So this raised a question, like, the companies, I'm not saying all companies are same, but majority of the companies, the diversity part, fine, having a diverse workforce is fine, but what about the inclusion? I'll second with Javed's statement. Without inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion are the three forces which will make these three are very important in whatever the goals you want to fulfill. So without that inclusion, if you have that inclusion, you can balance the nationalization and DEI goals. That efforts will make more meaningful. Because of the paucity of time, I'm fumbling a bit. So this is the whole idea, this is the whole story. So I just want to understand, if you have, it's not just the diversity, but with inclusion, you can bring that balance in between nationalization policies and the DEI policies. This is what I believe in.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chaitanya, for adding that bit. That inclusivity is a key for moving forward from the way nationalization is being met. Would like to hear more from the other panelists. How do you want to bring inclusion? How do you want to change within? Is that inclusion an organizational responsibility? Is it HR responsibility, or is it individual responsibility or a mindset change, a behavior change? So what exactly is inclusivity? Javed, we will give chances to others and then I will round it up about this question to you. Yeah. Tanu,
I would like to go next. Abhishek, if I can.
Please.
Hi, Abhishek, I'm Mubashra. So for me, it has always been a sense of belonging, the way I look at it, Abhishek, because, HR needs to act as facilitators where we are kind of ensuring a collaborative effort, not just from the stakeholders, but there needs to kind of be a leverage where the leadership team is involved in those initiatives as well. Because it cannot just be at a granular level, it has to be at a leadership level where we are putting that emphasis. And also, I think diversity, when I look at it, it's not just cultural or say gender or any particular nuance. It has to be where we are thinking about gender equality, we are looking about nationalities, we are looking about age, we are looking about having women focus groups in the leadership teams also. So it has to be
very good points, Mubashra. But just quickly moving on from the diversity agenda, I mean, like, since we need to move the discussion forward, would like to hear from Tanu, Aruma, Rima, anything around inclusivity. How do we bring inclusivity in the organization? So Tanu, as you've unmuted yourself, or followed by Rima.
I'll just
So
take a few seconds. So basically,
sure.
we have kept it a very simplified version, not only HR's inclusivity in terms of the language, because if we are bringing in this region people from different language, from different eating style, culture, are we very much inclusive with our language? Are we too much using guys, or are we using gender specified one? So particular emphasis for us is to be mindful of our language. Second thing, again, people tend to form the cliques, normal small groups, if they belong to certain region. Like in India also, if we have people from India, they are from Kerala, they are from Maharashtra. So they started forming groups, they started interacting in their local language, which the other people sometimes might feel offended. So we have very clear-cut policies, not only policies is just kind of a foundation. Apart from that, we have training, we have reporting, like people should feel psychologically safe. If somebody is feeling threatened, maybe because of a language, because if they are feeling 5 people are sitting together, 4 are either talking in their local language or they are talking in their language, which is Arabic or Indian language, and one person is just sitting mute with them. So that person is not feeling inclusive. Second thing is the clothes that we are wearing. Even though we are not client-facing employee staff here, but certain people try to wear some kind of clothes which is revealing their nationality or gender, their particular faith. So we try to have that, if at all in the organization, try to have inclusive wear as well. I don't think that this is very much commonly talked about, but sometimes, or like right now, there is a war ongoing in a different part of the world. We need to bring, okay, there are few people who belong from that region, but there should not be any kind of discrimination in terms of people having that faith, bringing some items or souvenirs that shows that we are in solidarity. We are trying to be very much careful about that. Second, the final thing is the food habits. If we have any events or activity, we always include that people should not have only Indian food where we have majority of our people. So these are very certain nuanced small topics, but it really brings a lot of great impact that company is thinking about including everybody if they have hired a diversified team.
Perfect. I mean, that brings in a lot of solutions here for a lot of us to move forward with. How do we bring those small changes and bring that inclusivity? Tanu, to you, and then followed by Javed, then we'll move to Nicole. Yeah.
Sure, Abhishek. So, from my own experience of having worked with a lot of corporates in terms of bringing about disability inclusion, And I see that the most important thing that I see is that when we talk about inclusion, it is something that cannot be brought about by any one single entity. Right? It is a collaborative effort, whether it is, so when we talk about leaders, whether it is leaders at the national level, your, your political leaders, your organizational leaders. So inclusion is not just one person's job. It has to be looked at, in a holistic manner. It is not any single person or single entity's job. So we need collaboration at all levels. So when we talk about, in my own experience, as I was mentioning, inclusion, it has to be looked at. So when I go to corporates and I talk about disability inclusion, there are questions that come back and say that, okay, is it something which is mandated by the government for us to do? Is that we need these many number of hires in the disability people in the disability space? Is it something that is mandated by the government to do? What is the compliance? Are we compliant? So, these all different kind of questions come up. But inclusivity, has to be looked at from all angles. So it has to be looked at from what is your, national level policy that is defining it. What is the intent of the leaders in the organization? So where is that intent? Then how can you, what are the, at the execution level, what are the challenges? So it has to be looked at all the three levels. And then we can talk about inclusion, a true inclusion in that space. So that's the angle that I wanted to bring in here.
Thank you, Tanu. Thank you for bringing that. And Aruma, you can.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just wanted to add on extend to what Tanu was saying, and I'll speak about it in the context of the UAE or the Middle East. Nationalization here has been something that it's been around for decades. 20 plus years, they've been talking about Emiratization, various forms of carrots, various forms of sticks to try and get people to do it. But companies didn't really do what they needed to do until it's come to a point where it's become strategic. I mean, and Emiratisation has always been a strategic priority of the country. As corporate citizens, it's for each entity, for each organization to also take on and say, yes, what do I do to contribute to that strategy? But unless the companies have been pushed, and today we're in a push situation where it's like you have to achieve, else here's the penalty, right? We've brought it to this state. Organizations, because they've not really done enough. And therefore, it's important that there is a larger entity somewhere saying that unless you give it the priority that it requires, it's not going to happen. There's more of this. I'll take people who are like me. I'll take people who speak like me. I'll take people I'm familiar with, kind of a mindset. I'm going to promote people that look like me, talk like me, speak like me, etc., etc. And you look at it from a gender point of view. You look at it from a, which institutes do I come from point of view. Only if I've studied rather than grown from within, will I take somebody, there are so many different ways in which we see that exclusion rather than inclusion mindset. And therefore, unless, and that for me, therefore, there's that bigger picture that, that directive that needs to be there. Sadly, it's become more of a directive because otherwise people don't do it. We take the easy way out. We'll just continue to do the same processes that we've always done because it seemed to work for us. Entities have probably not seen enough of the benefits of having diversity, of having inclusion, of having the full self at work. And once that comes, and that's where I think HR facilitates that kind of impact, giving that recognition, giving that importance to this is the benefit you get. Because at the end of the day, for a business, what's the outcome for me? How am I going to benefit from it? If someone is there to facilitate that kind of an outcome, you'll see organizations embracing it a lot more than we probably see today.
Javed, you wanted to add something and then we will give Tanu.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to add, how do you create that culture of inclusivity is the question that you asked, Abhishek. And in my life, when I look at it, pretty much everything goes into recruiting, right? But when you get a job description saying I need XYZ, I need this nationality, I need blue-eyed, I need white skin, I need this skin, I need that skin, then you're not creating an inclusive culture. Then when your interviewers are asking a woman candidate or a female candidate, are you comfortable working in a remote location and so on and so forth, which we will not ask for a male candidate? Or will you ask a question when you say, oh, is there any family planning in coming the way? Will you be connected forever with us? And is there something that, these things derail the culture. So first thing what you got to do is take that people who are doing this and one, maybe give them a big tight rap. Otherwise, take them into a training room and teach them a complete non-biased training, which is what we did with our organization. We took every single hiring manager, partner, director, associate director, put them into a room and train them on unconscious and conscious biases that they create while they are judging people or interviewing people or talking to people. I mean, I don't think any one of us will ask these kind of questions to a candidate at all these days, but that's where you have to do that. You have to shake that muscle memory that we have been used to be treating a people certain way and diversity. And then when you challenge that biases and conscious and unconscious one, Abhishek, is when you will start to put a spark on, the change of culture that might come in for inclusivity. So I wanted to just add on those points. That's it.
Anu, you wanted to add something? And
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. I was just wanted to add to what Aruma was saying in reference to that it is, it requires probably a movement across the globe, or bodies coming up together to look at inclusion. And I just wanted to share here that while working in the space of disability inclusion, I'm kind of very, very excited to say that at a global level there is a group which is formed as Valuable 500, which is a forum of top 500 companies who have come together and assigned a mandate saying that this is what they are going to do for disability inclusion in their own companies and set a role model. And there are a couple of companies from India. So I just wanted to kind of share that we also see that happening. While we are talking about this, we are seeing some change at the global level of how, we can think about
you
it.
rightly answered the question I was about to pose, that how the organizations make their readiness for the PODs coming into the workforce. And as you said that the FT 500 are coming towards it, to work towards that. Anything else? Arma, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, sorry, this was just on the previous point. I've been at the receiving end of a boy getting a position, even though I was better qualified for it. And I'm talking from my childhood. Yeah, and that's something that still sits with me 30 years later. I've been at the receiving end of people asking me, are you planning to have a baby? I've been at the receiving end of all kinds of different ways of, really having my blood boil. But when I think about it in another way, if there is someone today, I know, there are people who'd still probably be asked the question at an interview about family planning. And the default answer that women will give is no, 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 because they want the job very desperately, right? The thing is, if we ask it right, we shouldn't be scared about someone saying, yes, I'm family planning. Yes, I'm planning to have, a child in the next 1 year. That shouldn't disqualify me if it's asked in the right way, because at the end of the day, that's also feeding back into DEI. It's also feeding into B, because then we are a family inclusive organization. We don't look at it from that angle enough. And therefore, there's always this negative connotation to, because I'm a woman, because I'm going to have a family or whatever else it might be, we tend to have people default answering questions that might not be the right answer or their true answer. So we need to think about both sides. As an organization, we need to be thinking about how we build that in, rather than just kind of saying there is a right and a wrong answer or a black and white.
Let's be a little more solution focused. So as I say, underrepresented population coming into workforce, either they are females or nationals or special category, all of that would require some or the other level of support to bring that equity across. So that's the bottom line of it. And and that's the portion, or that's the part of discussions more around how do we bring those underprivileged at the work at the workforce, how the workplace is ready to take up these people and accept them, the way they accept the others to bring them together. Um, what 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 about the other unrepresented categories? So we primarily talks about nationalization, we're talking about gender. I don't think so. How many of you have company level gender policy to have a balance of percentage of gender? And I think a lot less. Some of you have. Javed been raising his hand, but at a national level, there is very, very less policy and processes defined around them, right? And he for she movement, and if the other elements which we talk about was primarily around those diversity elements as well. So moving in to the next question, and I would like Nicole also to talk from the Singapore market perspective, that what are those other efforts, what are those balancing efforts which you as an leader in your organization are taking to bring in diversity across, because across the GCC nations and as well as the Southeast Asia, there's a glass ceiling to be told around. So how are you managing, Nicole, there? If you can unmute yourself and we could hear you.
I shout and cry.
Yeah.
I mean, to break the ceiling, I shout and cry. I was just joking. Okay, so
You
I think
start to cry.
yeah. Okay, actually, let me give a bit about Singapore context first, right? It's the government is doing pretty good job when it comes to talking about, inclusivity, especially when we don't have too many local talents. When we hire foreigners in, they actually mandate the foreigners to go on an orientation to get to know Singapore. Right. So that's the kind of, then you as an employer, you need to give them the leave for them to attend. Right. So it brings the entire mindset of the moment. If you have, foreign talents, you will have to, do certain things. And that brings back to the organization, right? If you want to hire somebody of whether it's different race, gender, or, that kind of thing. So you just need to be mindful that, you need to have this kind of awareness and education. So I believe that, the awareness and education is one. However, we talk a lot about DEI and all of this. Ultimately, it's every organization really different. And ultimately, the organization will not survive if it's just for a purpose of whether it's DEI. Ultimately, it's the value that an individual brings. And the individual, and you look at it and see, how certain processes that you put in place such that, you can be, really having the agenda of DEI and be together. So while we talk about race and all of this, how about, health, looks, disability and all of this. So I recall there was one time when I did interview long time ago and I hired a graphic designer out from India. I do not even see his face. I did not even see how he looked. And finally, when I reached India, I hired him, of course. And I realized that, oh, okay, he couldn't really move. And so we don't, then you can see that, that process of when I interview, we don't even, and in the manager who interviewed does not ask about, what condition you are in or how you are doing and all of this, and really just based on talent-based, value-based kind of structure, right? We gave a test for certain what we are hiring for, as long as you qualify and all of this, and then it's really, into the recruitment process. So the piece about, how to do it and all, like I said, it really depends on, if you're saying about ratio of female and male, sometimes in a tech organization, you tend to have more male than female. It's really harder to do that balance. So then how do you have other agenda that not looking only at gender, but how about mental wellness, right? Somebody with, challenges, how are you going to be inclusive about them? How do you embrace them? How do you make them feel that they are safe and they can belong and that they can really contribute what we hire them for? So that's a bit of the point.
Thank you so much for bringing the whole well-being agenda as well as part of the equity equation, right? And inclusivity equation. And totally agree with you that it has to be looked at a much larger context. The scale has to be drawn a much larger, and why only nationalization as an agenda? There has to be the other diverse elements should also fall part of policies and procedure from the organization as well as the government perspective to drive these things, and more internally driving practices and processes to bring people together. But I will just put a contrary thought here that, as the humanity grew, and taking from the book Sapiens, and if all have read that, the Homo sapiens evolved when they come together, right? And when they come together as a form of common religion, money, and other aspects, right? So as in society, we are known to be moving in groups and creating those divides right from the beginning, right? So unconscious biases are right from the childhood, right? So awareness is more important than actually overcoming those awarenesses. So understanding and avoidance is something which we all do, and that's where we continue to grow, and that at an individual level as well. That if I'm grown in a in a family wherein woman was doing both the work, as from our grandmother's time where the women were only doing the housework, compared to now where women plays both the hat of housemaker as well as the um, as well as a professional. So the things have changed from society by at large. So uh, uh, future is going to be much more faster. So the future of work, when we talk about more remote, right? So you, as Nicole was saying, you might not see who you are working with for a long time, and you need to collaborate. So there will be boundaryless organizations. How are we preparing for that? So I will give everybody an open mic. This is put your thought around that, how the future of work is going to be when we look at all of these nationalization agenda versus managing around equity and inclusion. So your thoughts.
Here to stay, Abhishek, and I think we can't shy away from the problem that the localization will be a larger part of our workforce in the coming years. We cannot get away from that. We are here in an economy and a country that will have to start supporting that country and economy. So we can't be looking at having a 90%. Yes, it's 2% today, but it's going to continue growing, and it's continue to be. So you have to start, you need to start getting ready for being a very mixed organization of having a very multi-focused and diversity-focused organization. And get ready. I mean, we talk about technology in our lives so much and how we are using technology to simplify our jobs, but we are not using technology to do the analysis, patterns, trends, and kind of understanding on how we can use that for D&I or IDE, right? So I think we need to start looking at how we can bring in a little bit of a technology in this focus, wherein we start to just look at the right things and give the right solutions to our organizations to get them better, rather than just being his say, her say, and my say, right? We have to get away from those thought aspects right now.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add anything around it? Yeah, please. Please, Sriram.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a lovely discussion. I just wanted to share one slide, which I really think helps us understand the concept of DEIB, right? Whenever I have talked to HR professionals, right, the concept of DEIB, they stick to D. Okay, diversity is just no one has been able to explain the concept much better than this single visual. So diversity essentially ensures that you get different types of people, but it stops there. What equality does is you provide everyone the same footstool to stand to, but does that make a difference, right? It does not. You are providing the same footstool to everyone, but it might not be helping everyone. And that's where equity essentially comes in. Equity is all about understanding that each one's needs are different, and providing one with a ramp, one with a footstool, the other probably does not need any support, right? The equity aspect is what you do. Inclusivity is all about from a company perspective, I am doing this to the employees, but I think where it caps is belonging. Do your employees essentially feel the same way? Okay, everyone's talking about inclusivity. Yes, I mean, again, it's from an employer perspective, but belonging is from the employee perspective. But the best aspect that we need to go towards is justice, where essentially there is no barriers available. Everyone is provided the same without any additional support from the HR or the organization. This is a utopian, this is truly utopian, can never happen. But I think everyone should gradually move from diversity towards belonging, not just focus on equality or other stages. That's a quick thing I wanted to share. Back to you, Abhishek.
I think stay here, Sriram. In your last picture of justice, no one is talking to each other. And that is where we bring the whole belongingness concept of that when we bring people together, we just not talk about breaking or creating the ecosystem, but people should feel safe. And that's where the psychological safety and over to you, RP. You want to add anything?
Yeah, this is all an incredible, getting all of these different perspectives. This is incredible because I'm from the US. I live in Singapore. And so the issues that I deal with around DEIB are kind of Asia and the US. But my focus and emphasis has always been around belonging. I think, as you said earlier, Abhishek, that with borderless organizations, it makes me think at some point we'll have more diversity than we will anything. And so there's always these categories that are coming up. Well, we've got this group, we've got that group, we've got this group. But what I've really come to understand is that our biggest challenge is emotional maturity and a lack of a skill for nurturing relationships. And so that is the area that I generally focus on, because it is a skill. We all know that people shouldn't be doing this or that. We all know what the problem is. But winning hearts and minds and this kind of behavior change is the sticky stuff that nobody really wants to roll up their sleeves or take the plunger and get in there with. Because we can set up DEI programs and policies, but as everyone has articulated so well thus far, is that only accomplishes so much, because people need to feel that they are accepted for who they are, and they need to feel that they belong. And that is the thing that everyone knows is the issue, but no one really says, well, how do we actually create belonging? How do we actually do it? We know we got to belong. What do we do? And so it's been my life's work to kind of develop this framework, identifying that our big struggle is a lack of emotional maturity, meaning we can't manage our emotions well enough to get out of the way of our tendencies to discriminate, or our tendencies. We can legislate things, we can say there are quotas, we can say the government mandates things, but how do you get into someone's heart? Because they can always say that they didn't hire this person because they weren't qualified, when really what was hiding behind it was some bias or some bigoted way of thinking. So we really need to focus on helping people develop emotional maturity, because that doesn't just apply within the work context, it applies in our personal lives as well. So we start to see that we develop this emotional maturity, but then there's also nurturing relationships. How do we learn and understand how do we learn and understand to nurture relationships? Because at the end of the day, that's really the engine behind diversity, equity, inclusion. Do I have a relationship with this person? And how do I bring myself to an understanding of where I find common ground? Everybody has basically the same fundamentals. We all want to be well, happy, and peaceful. Doesn't matter if you can't walk. It doesn't matter if you're female. It doesn't matter if you're transgender. Everybody wants to have some sense of happiness and to belong. And so that's the area that I focus on, is to teach that skill. And I think that is really what's needed, because it is a skill. It's not some utopic ideal. It is actually a skill to learn how to develop emotional maturity and relationship nurturing.
That's so
And actually,
perfectly put together. Yeah, I'm sorry.
no, I said if you look at Sriram's slide, I think if you look at the first three pictures and the last picture, there's a wall that's broken, and that's our effort. That's what we need to break. That wall that you see, that fence, that needs to get away from when you start to work on these aspects. And I think that's what I usually do is break that biases wall.
I think we create so in that picture, what we do is we add those microphones across in terms of saying that they are also talking to each other. So when we do more inclusivity and unconscious biases, we say that go and talk to people as well around you to know more about it, what they are doing, how they are doing, getting to know and talking to each other. And also, as we are closing this session, there's a lot of questions, lot of thoughts around that, where it starts from. So where it starts from, all of these changes is from us, right? So how do we take this diverse people together? How do we go ahead together from here? We'll be sharing all our thoughts, whatever we discussed around it. I would love to share a case study of Google, which was primarily around how did the whole diversity fiasco happen. I would also share a case or a paper around which has been around in the Middle East region. This is basically a combination of 62 different papers, which was looked at doing a topic analysis. That what are those major areas which were discussed in the Middle East around this topic, so we can share it across. We'll stay in touch. Knowledge sharing is never ending. And look forward to seeing you more, and look forward for us to invite more people. And inclusivity starts right from here, as Sriram says.
Thank you. A great session, Abhishek. Sriram, thank you very much for having us.